remercie le représentant des Pays-Bas de ses remarques et je donne maintenant la parole à UNMAS, Service d'action contre les mines des Nations Unies.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me start by congratulating you and your team of the Swiss presidency, our sister UN entity, the Office for Disarmament Affairs, as well as the ISU, for your hard work and dedication to making the second review conference of the Convention on Cluster Munitions a success under these difficult circumstances. I myself have been witness to your extraordinary efforts and creativity in addressing any challenge. As it is the first time we take the floor, Mr. President, allow me to also make a few remarks on the draft review itself, the draft review document. And while I am the head of the UNMAS office in Geneva, the following statement is delivered on behalf of the Interagency Coordination Group on Mine Action, IACG-MA, comprising the United Nations entities involved in mine action. The United Nations believe that the new working papers published last week show considerable progress in the development of the review document and the Lausanne Action Plan, and the United Nations thanks you for the inclusive approach you have taken in the development of these key documents. It is noted with much appreciation that many of the comments submitted by the United Nations have been incorporated in the new working papers. Excellencies, while the new draft review document is already very strong, the United Nations calls for the role of the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, in the Convention framework to be explored, since the SDGs are presently only included as competing pressing priorities, hindering states' accession or adherence to the CCM. The SDGs are complementary to the Convention's obligations. For instance, the pursuit of a rights-based approach to victim assistance can bolster efforts to meet SDGs related to health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, and more, while the clearance and destruction of cluster munitions and risk education can accelerate the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies. With respect to the working paper on elements for the Lausanne Action Plan, the United Nations welcomes the inclusion of a new section on cross-cutting principles. First, it is much appreciated that the contribution of the Convention towards meeting the, I quote, broader agenda of the international community, including the SDGs, unquote, has been acknowledged one such principle. Second, on gender and diversity considerations, it is noted with appreciation that this principle is mainstream and spelled out in more concrete terms in all relevant sections of the Lausanne Action Plan. The recently updated United Nations gender guidelines for mine action programs further illustrate how gender considerations can be included in different stages of mine action programming, which would usefully assist the sector in consistently incorporating gender mainstreaming in the programs. Third, this section would benefit from the inclusion of other cross-cutting principles, namely on the meaningful participation of victims and survivors in all aspects relating to the implementation of the Convention and the equitable prioritization of areas of action to benefit society and affected populations and to lead to solutions, for instance, by encouraging the sustainable return of displaced populations. Before I conclude, and lastly, the creation of a separate section on risk education has our full support. It is being debated, however, without any conclusion, whether to also use the term risk education in lieu of risk reduction education throughout the plan. The general considerations under this section could further highlight that risk education aims for at-risk persons to adopt and sustain safe behavior. This may contribute to a broader health outcome, namely the reduction of incidences to which all mine action pillars contribute. It could further be stressed that risk education is not limited to cluster munitions, remnants, and thus may also involve awareness-raising efforts related to the risk of injury and death caused by the use of these munitions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je tiens à remercier le représentant d'UNMAS pour ses commentaires fort pertinents, en particulier la question du titre ou du libellé d'une éventuelle section sur l'éducation du risque pourra être discutée plus tard quand nous arriverons à cette section.